So, hi everybody, welcome. Um, Welcome to the first of our White River Chronicles, Volume 1. Before we get started this morning, what I'd like to do first is just give a shout out to Casa Blue in Šibenik in Croatia, who are hosting me for this particular volume. And on to our discussion today. So, the White River. One of our future guests said to me, um, I'd love to do this. I love the idea of what you're doing and everything, but I have a question. What is the White River? And I kind of thought about it and thought, okay, I know, but what do I say? So I'm going to throw the question to Vinat because he is fully prepared to answer this right now.
Well, yeah. Hello, everyone. It's exciting to be having this conversation, the first of many, Philly. And yes, we're calling it the White River Chronicles, and it's got a bit of a history. At least, within Sumartne, we have a bit of a history with the name White River. We seem to be writing it all the time, so it's quite challenging to come to grips with it and think about where do you begin answering that question. So as you were speaking about it, my mind went back to one of the places where this came from, and it came from this myth of the unknown sea that we have in many traditions across the world of when you're on the path of individual or a community's transformation, an organization's transformation. Um, Everybody's got a fair idea of what the path would look like up to a certain point, right? And it's that point where all of a sudden there is no path anymore because land has turned into water. That's the unknown sea that you encounter on that path. And that's where the idea of the White River came from. And we talk about flow and we talk about it as uh, the ease of creating value. This experience we have where the best of who we can be meets uh, its most worthy challenge, so to speak, in the outside world. There's a client who shows up with a request that you've never really worked on yet, but you know that it's opening a whole new frontier to get you to
Mm.
someplace exciting, or it's somebody you're coaching who has suddenly entered a territory that seems very alien and foreign to you, and yet you are called to be present with the client in that space and to be of service to them. So, in many ways, how I see the White River is this experience where really you lose sight of yourself, you lose your flow completely to regain it again in a whole new way if you're brave enough to kind of jump into it and see where it takes you.
The brave enough to jump into it bit, it just brings me back to actually doing white water rafting. Uh,
Rafting.
yeah, I did it. I'll never do it again, but I did it once in Colorado, I think it was. And I thought, yeah, let me give it a go. It's not too bad. The waters are lower and everything, but I totally underestimated the power of the white water. So looking at it, it looked like it was a reasonable flow and it was safe and it was very, a few bumps, but yeah, we're strapped in. We're going to be okay here. But what I hadn't accounted for is that along the White River there are swirls as well. It's not just the turmoil that's at the top. There's a swirl going underneath, and occasionally you get to a waterfall or a bit where the rocks are in the way. And I remember at one stage, the guide shouting to everybody, "Get over to the left because we're going to end up in a different flow." And
Mm,
everybody went to the right, and we ended up over the waterfall and spinning like a spinning top. And one by one, people were being thrown out of the boat into the White River. And at that point, they had to lie on their backs and go with the surface flow of the White River. but because the more your body was in it, the more the pull was coming from underneath. But if you lay flat, you just glide. Whenever I think about the White River now, I always think about that surface flow and then the coils that are going on underneath, bringing up the sediment on the bottom that you don't see. And those occasional times when we also consciously take a break in the rock pool to the left or the right because we know before we need to navigate further, we need to steady ourselves, we need to ground something. And so we take a rest where it's calmer water. But the river's
Yeah,
always going to flow irrespective.
yeah. It's interesting you mentioned white water rafting. I went back to an experience I had of the same as well, and this was in Sikkim in the northeastern part of India. And I think I completely resonate with the first part of what you said of sort of really underestimating what it might actually be like because we looked at the river from a distance of we were on a hilltop and we saw it down there and then they said that's where we're going to go and do it and it looked fairly harmless and peaceful as it was kind of going along and not quite the image of this ferocious white river that I had in my mind when I heard the term whitewater rafting. So we're like, okay, that seems easy enough. And then we go down, and as we strap on our life jackets and get into the boats and we are on the thing, and in 5 minutes, we met the White River, and it was, you could tell that, oh my God, okay, this is a lot more energetic, let's say, than what you visualized it from the top. The other thing I remember about it is every time the water meets the rocks in its flow, it forms these little whirlpools and knots that change the boat's course. And that in effect starts to trigger knots within yourself in terms of how you're feeling about that whole experience. You start to feel a little tense. There's a roller coaster of things. There's a sense of excitement, at the same time there's this thing that I hope I just don't get thrown off the boat. Luckily I didn't, but there's all of these things going on, right? You're trying to ride it. At the same time, there's this complete unpredictability about where you may go. And it's a really humbling experience at the end of it, because when you're done with it, you just step off and come back on the ground saying, you know, at the end of the day, when you step off familiar territory, which is, where animals made for land, we get into water, it it really brings us to the very edge of who we are.
Yeah, with wobbly legs.
Yes, very much. Yes.
When we talk, it, all of this very much resonates with our flow and process in life as well. How do I get there? And you reach out and it's already gone. You're already in that fast flow of reaction response and it's really kicking off. Um, but also, if I take that in context with some of the experiences we have in life as well, while we're working with people, but also our coaching, being coached, uh, our experiences in different environments, is that not far below the surface, even though there's a whirl going on, not far below the surface, if you can actually sink into the water, um, there's a steady area. There's kind of this quiet space in there. And I think one of my experiences with this is really to learn to trust, to not try and fight the flow, but actually to allow yourself to drop into it more. And not with a sense of handing it over, but with a sense of resting into it and allowing that piece to hold. Um, it reminds me of the discussion we've had around coaching and all of the uh, aspects of our psychology and our social connects and everything from doing a daily activity, interacting with family and holding a class. it all relies on those key elements to be in place. And so I want to raise a flag right now because I want to get your perspective of how the White River supports these flags that we work with.
Flow.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about water, and it's this unfamiliar element for all of us, land animals, so to speak, right? And took me right back to my swimming experience,
Oh,
of
yes.
trying to learn swimming with my son recently, and how the instructor, kept giving this instruction to us to say to relax and, to almost sort of submit and surrender to the water to allow yourself to float, right? And sure enough, I mean, you're thinking you're doing that, but what you don't recognize is the psychological tension and the emotional tension and tightness that you have in the body turns physical very quickly, and all of a sudden, you're holding that tension in your muscles and your skeleton, and you just become this heavy mass that just is set up to sink, and you're struggling, and the more you struggle, ironically, the worse it gets, right? And there's no way to actually think your way out of that experience. It just, there's a point when you just suddenly realize it's happening, but you don't really know how you got there. But over time, somehow your nervous system learns that, and it's really hard to articulate it, that thing of easing into the flow. And it's in that struggle, I think, where I experience the three flags, all of them. And I think it's a great metaphor, the analogy to work with it through. The first flag is the systemic flag or the blue flag, as we call it, right? Which is what's the big picture in all of this, right? This is, I'm an adult trying to learn swimming, and there's loads of, resources available of, how to learn. There's established techniques about how you do it. You know that there is going to be a phase of struggle, and you just have to be patient through it, etc., etc. So there's that part, where the facts of the big picture are there so that you don't get lost in the overwhelm of just drowning in the water and hands and legs flailing all over. Now this meets the moment I go into the pool. I'm gone in now equipped with all the tips and techniques of expert swimmers that are on YouTube, and I've got this idea of how to do this. And when I go and meet the water, very clear in my head that I know exactly how I'm going to do today, the whole thing just it dissolves like salt in water, right? The moment your body is in the water, the body takes over. Everything that the mind was connected to until now just disappears, and then all of a sudden it's hands and legs flailing everywhere again, and like, how do I get this right? So that is the blue flag, all of a sudden getting overwhelmed by the psychological emotional experience of being in the water, of being unsafe. Although you know intellectually that you're only in 4 feet of water and you're not going to die, but the body obviously has a memory that refuses to accept that as a physiological truth. So then that's the crimson flag, as we call it, or the psychological flag, which comes up. And when this flag is really activated and strong, we cannot see anything else beyond us being physically and emotionally safe. And everything we do is to first reach that place of safety. Without that, we can't do it. Now, all this, the struggle between the blue and the crimson, of course, is getting moderated by the social space, which the pool also is, which is, there's 10 or 12 other fellow learners in the pool with me, and on one side of me, I have people who are still struggling to kind of get it. So when I turn and look at them, I feel a little good about myself that, okay, I'm not as bad as those guys are. I'm not struggling that badly. But when I turn over to my left and I see these guys kind of glide through the water effortlessly, and I'm going, when am I ever going to get there? Will I ever get there? So there's that social tension, which is what we call the green flag, which
Mm.
is your ground reality of being in the pool. The moment you come out of the water and you look around, what you see are other people trying to go through the same experience as you, and they're having their own experience with the blue and the crimson, right? So somebody comes and gives you some advice saying, Well, actually, it's very easy, and all you need to do is da 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 and so on. And you're like, okay, all right, I'll try that now. And I go in again and I panic again. So that's, those three flags in the swimming pool. And it's uncanny how the same flags, the blue, the green, and the crimson, show up in so many aspects of our life, whether we are individuals trying to learn something new, or an organization or a team trying to navigate its way through a transition. Typically, it's these three that tend to be at play.
And, for those people that are joining us today as well, just going from white water, white river to different colored flags, you'll be hearing a more around the flags and the discussion around those. This is laying a bit of a context for them as well. Um, um, so back to the White River itself and what our guests can experience on these volumes that we're going to be now recording. And you know, the space we have here is for not only us to explore and share our experience, but we'll have certain guests coming along, which are going to talk about it from their perspective as well. And the theme around our ongoing White River Chronicles is really going to be um, rooted and grounded in the fundamental human side of change, transition, and transformation in the workplace as well as life itself. So that's going to be our underlying theme. And if you then think about how that actually links very well to the experience of the White River, while we're all trying to find that solid foundation for our humanness, our ability to land in that space, we're also navigating everything else at the same time. So this is what our future discussions will be based on. But we'll be inviting, as I said, others to come in and talk from their perspective from different walks of life, different experiences, both professional and academic. And our first guest in is going to be Dr. Louise Delaney, which I'm very excited about. So that's just to give you a snippet of what's coming. We have a White River backdrop, and it's got this beautiful picture of this little bit of a waterfall and white water, um, and it's actually a picture taken from a place that when I went to in the Lake District when he was visiting the UK last year, and it has a reference to something that we both are very familiar with, and I think. We have a little bit of land there that we've preserved as part of a nature reserve, and we, in our infinite wisdom, went searching for it because we thought, we have this land, and we took a walk, and it was quite beautiful. I remember it was heather, it was heathland, it was very rugged and raw, and when we walked back, I remember hearing the sound of the white water and it holds very fond memories of our land ownership, but also the experience of just being there and connecting with it. So,
Yeah, what is the White River that is waiting for me personally? That I'm either avoiding, or that is inviting me, or that is something that I need to approach. All of us uh, have a White River that we know we must cross over on the other side, and some of us might really be approaching it every day, walking right to the edge of that water, standing there, looking over to the other side, seeing how clearly that's where we need to be whenever we feel ready to cross the White River. And in some ways, for me, that really captures the essence of life. That we're always getting ready to get to some place, to cross a river, so to speak. Uh, for us, nothing is more exciting, nothing is more fulfilling than kind of being there with them and just holding the space as they make that journey, giving them what they need as they get through it, right? And that's why we do this. And Yeah.
There are times when it's absolutely necessary to cross this water, raging water,
Mm.
and trust that the right stepping stones are there. Because sometimes you just cannot see them in the way you'd like to, but they're there. And there are other times when if you slip, which we all do, it's okay to let the water carry you a little bit as well until you get to a point where you can stand up and get out.
Mm.
And just recognize it and being present to it and allowing yourself to experience it. And
Yeah, we've just reached the edge of the White River in this
we've just
conversation.
we've just reached that edge. I think, in those edges where the reflection moment comes in there, it's like in my head, I'm going, okay, I've just reached a place where I think we can just stop now. But you know what? If I carried on, there's a nice little rabbit hole waiting.
Yeah,
So on
exactly.
that note, I think what we'll do, folks, is we'll end it there and we'll continue with the rabbit hole the next time we speak. But thank you for joining us today. And we do hope you enjoy these ongoing conversations. On that note, I'd like to wish you all a great week, month, till we see you again. Thank you very much for joining, Vinayak.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nick. And until next time.